Let me just give you a couple quotes this morning. Don't shout it out. I suspect you'll know who the speakers are, but as you hear it, just think about a little bit of that person's story, what has come before, what is coming after. Young man said, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man." Some of you were alive when that was said. Some of us weren't. Now I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, all people are created equal. And lastly, I ask the court to declare sex a suspect criterion and urge a position forcibly stated in 1837 by Sarah Grimke, noted abolitionist and advocate of equal rights for men and women. She said, "I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of my brethren is that they take their feet off our necks." Great one. Each of those speeches comes at critical points in their speaker's life. They come at a time in which the person's really preparing to take the next step in life, where a lot more is going to be demanded of them. They are important people. For John F. Kennedy, that meant needing to grow as a very young president and face the challenges of what it means to be the commander-in-chief of the United States. For Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963, the speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial kind of merged all the struggle that had gone before and all the increasing civil rights struggle that lay ahead. And for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 1973, this is the first time she speaks in front of the Supreme Court. She was already quietly becoming this force for women's rights. And with every step, every victory from that moment on time, she slowly but surely started promoting greater gender equality, and people were placing great hopes on her every move. And I just have to say, there's still work to be done, but we thank her for her witness. As I look at each of them, they had to personally keep growing in order for other people to keep benefiting. The final quote of the day is one that appears in Acts 10. "I truly understand God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears him and does what is right is acceptable to him." Peter said that. It's the speech of someone who was prepared to take their next steps that's going to take him into unfamiliar turf. It's the speech of someone who is growing in faith. It's a speech of someone who couldn't have made that speech on his own. To take the next steps in his faith, Peter absolutely needed help. He needed a kickstart from others, a nudge, and God used the unexpected in his life to get through to him. If we talk about Peter, a lot of us know a lot about Peter, but let's just quick review. We know he was a fisherman called to follow Jesus. He was the bold, outspoken leader of the disciples, often the first to say something or do something. Denied knowing Jesus 3 times on the night of the rest. Got a great nickname in the Rock, the first century Rock. Witnessed the resurrection, saw Jesus alive. In the book of Acts, he becomes this great preacher. Also began to have the ability to heal others by his presence. Clearly, though, he brought many people to Christ. The key point, what you need to see, is throughout the Gospels and up to this point of Acts, Peter has been reaching out to his fellow Jews. He's had a lot of success, and you could imagine he could have just continued the rest of his life laser focused on reaching out to the Jews. He's been very, very faithful in that, and isn't that what you and I are expected to do? Kind of use the gifts God has given to us, and if we're faithful, God is going to be delighted. And I think we could say yes, but perhaps God has more in store for us. And God will sometimes use whatever it takes to get through to us and show us that he has a bigger plan for us. Acts 10 and 11 are just 2 wonderful, wonderful chapters. They involve Peter and a man named Cornelius as the major players. Cornelius is a foreigner. He's the leader in the Italian army. He's this Roman citizen in the town of Caesarea Maritima. But we learn pretty quickly that he's a seeker. He's curious. He's curious about Judaism, and he's adopted a lot of their spirituality into his daily life. He's well regarded. There's a sense that he has sort of said yes to God. He gets this vision from an angel. Hey, go find this man named Peter. You've never met him. He's down in Joppa. Doesn't get much detail, but he somehow senses, hey, I got to do this. So he sends 3 men to go get Peter. Meanwhile, Peter is praying on the roof of the house in Joppa. Why he's on the roof, I do not know. I do not pray on the roof. But he's on the roof. He gets hungry and he desires for something to eat. And we remember that devout Jews, they were called to be unique, distinct, live differently from other people, which meant your diet was slightly different from other people. Certain animals were considered unclean. They were off limits, if you will. So Peter falls into this trance while he's praying, and he gets this vision of a white sheet coming down and every animal on the face of the earth on that sheet. And the voice speaks to him very, very, very personally. Peter, it's not a vision for someone else. Peter, get up, kill, and eat. And he says, not a chance. No way. No way. I can't take that step. I will not do that. I've never done that. 3 times the sheet goes down, every animal under the earth. 3 times personally, Peter, get up, kill, and eat. And 3 times he says, no way. The blanket disappears. But his last words are, no way. Then the three of Cornelius' men arrive. Peter's still in this trance. 3 men arrive at the door, and just so happens to be these 3 Gentiles. 3 unclean men who Peter would not have associated with. Peter does not hear them knocking. What it says is the Spirit whispered in his ear. Whispered in his ear, go down. People have arrived for you. Go with them. Don't ask questions. Go with the flow. I sent them to you. So Peter goes down. He opens the door, extends them hospitality, lets them spend the night, eats with them. The next day, he willingly goes with them to Caesarea. He meets Cornelius there, this unclean Gentile. And Cornelius speaks to him, tells them about the vision that he had, how he had this vision, how he was supposed to send for Peter. And when Peter arrives, looks at him in the eye, Cornelius says, I was supposed to listen to whatever you have to say. And the light bulb goes off for Peter. Peter gets it. He understands this vision that he said no way to. He understands that the next step in his ministry is to proclaim Jesus' love to a much, much broader community that now includes the Gentiles. It's this aha moment for him. And then he speaks those words a lot of us know well. I understand God shows no partiality. He says, I understand my next steps. My next steps are about this process of teaching Jesus and leading the Gentiles to follow him. I think the next steps, whenever you and I gather for worship, that's what we're here to figure out as individuals and as a congregation. I think we can always learn from this story. There are so many faithful people gathered here today, and I think it's helpful to remember that the most faithful of the faithful, Peter, said no way at first. Not once, not twice. He said it 3 times, perhaps even more than that. He said no way to God. But that's important for us to see that taking the next steps in our faith is never an easy thing to do, and it's not always easy for us to figure out. But there's no doubt in my mind, God always wants us to take the next steps. As a church, I'm convinced that there are times when we've been like Peter and said, no way, not a chance, we cannot do it that way, we won't do it that way. But God has a way of kind of getting through to us when we put on those brakes. He will continue to put Cornelius's in front of us, people and opportunities that challenge us to grow and be more inclusive and broader in our outreach here in Gaithersburg. As individuals, many of us know what we need to do to take the next step. Some of us know what we need to do, but we're afraid to try. Some of us are just a bit confused, or we feel lost or alone. But the key thing for all of us to remember is that when God wants us to take the next steps, God will find a way to get through to you. Sooner or later, the Peter in all of us is going to be overcome. Sooner or later, any no that you and I can possibly muster will be turned into a yes. Amen.